relationship, maybe years later, and just felt this overwhelming wave of confusion.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, all the time.
Right, where you look at this person who you were absolutely convinced was your soulmate or your destiny, and suddenly you realize you were basically under a spell.
Yeah, yeah. It's that terrifying moment where you ask yourself, who was I and what on earth was I thinking?
Exactly.
It's a completely universal experience and honestly, a deeply unsettling one to confront. We all desperately want to believe that our romantic choices are rational or, at the very least, driven by some authentic, undeniable connection.
Right, something real.
But when we strip away the romance, what we experience as this irresistible pull of destiny is often a highly orchestrated psychological trap.
Which brings us to the really fascinating psychological breakdown we are getting into today. We are looking at a highly detailed case study of a very specific, incredibly modern interpersonal power play.
A very detailed one, yeah.
Our subjects for this deep dive are two individuals, a 28-year-old woman we'll call 045, and a 20-year-old male college student named Zhang San.
It's a remarkable deconstruction of a relationship dynamic. Yeah. What this psychological profile does is lay out the exact step-by-step anatomy of a manipulation. We are looking at how deeply personal vulnerabilities can be perfectly weaponized.
So our mission today is to dissect what the source analysis calls the sibling love filter.
Right.
It's this complex illusion of romance that 045 is entirely trapped inside. We are going to unpack how this filter gets built, how someone takes advantage of it, and finally, that inevitable, highly destructive moment when reality just crashes right through the glass.
And it always crashes.
It always does. Think of this whole dynamic like a psychological heist. But the vault being robbed isn't bank holding cash, it's the victim's own perception of reality.
Wow.
And the most brutal part, the thief doesn't even have to pick the lock because the victim has unknowingly left the vault door wide open.
That is the perfect framework. Because before we can understand the heist itself, we really have to understand the vault.
Okay, let's break that down.
Right. We have to explore the exact construction of this sibling love filter. It's vital to recognize that what 045 is experiencing is not just a casual crush.
Yeah.
She is inside a full-blown immersion experience, and it's woven from several very distinct psychological and cultural threads.
Okay, so let's start with the foundation of that vault.
Yeah.
The first major component here is the patriarchal biological clock.
Yes.
So 045 is 28 years old, and she has a history of relationship trauma. Even if she thinks she's this modern, independent woman subconsciously, she is swimming in a cultural soup that tells her the window for marriage and childbearing is closing.
And that creates a baseline hum of ambient anxiety.
Right.
It's a low-level panic that constantly whispers she needs to secure a reliable partner, and soon. Her cultural conditioning has essentially pre-programmed her to relentlessly scan her environment for potential long-term mates.
It's like going grocery shopping on an empty stomach. It's
Yeah.
exactly.
Everything suddenly looks like a meal. When you have that level of subconscious hunger for security, your brain starts taking shortcuts.
Huge shortcuts.
So a 20-year-old college student shows up. He's young, he's energetic, he's actively giving her attention.
Yeah.
Logically, a 20-year-old college guy is probably not looking to settle down and start a family.
Definitely not.
But her anxiety demands a solution, and he happens to be standing right there, so her brain automatically tags him as a marriage prospect.
You hit the nail on the head with the brain taking shortcuts. This societal pressure does an immense amount of heavy lifting before Zhang San even has to speak a single word.
Wow, yeah.
But ambient anxiety alone isn't quite enough to build an illusion this strong. The mortar holding the bricks together is purely chemical.
The hormonal drive.
Yes.
This is where the body basically betrays the mind. They have a physical arrangement, and that physical intimacy triggers incredibly high arousal. Her brain is getting absolutely flooded with dopamine and oxytocin, which are the bonding chemicals. The mechanics of this are so deeply ingrained in our evolutionary biology. The intense physical intimacy releases these neurochemicals to promote attachment.
Wait, it's literally a survival mechanism.
It is. But the trap here lies in the psychological concept of misattribution of arousal.
Okay, explain that.
Well, these are real, powerful physiological responses happening in her body, but her brain needs a narrative to explain why she feels so intensely attached to a 20-year-old.
Oh, I see.
So she misinterprets this very standard mechanical biological reaction to physical intimacy as like fate.
She feels that high, that sudden chemical rush of bonding, and instead of saying, my oxytocin receptors are firing, she says, this must be true love.
Precisely. She feels a profound unity of body and mind, completely unaware that her body is just doing what bodies do.
But hormones and age anxiety, those have been around forever. What makes this a distinctly modern trap is how the internet supercharges the illusion.
Oh, absolutely.
I want you, listening right now, to think about your own social media algorithms. Think about the idealized relationship tropes that get fed to you on TikTok or Instagram. For 045, her algorithm is feeding her a massive current cultural trend that glorifies this exact dynamic, the older sister and the younger brother.
Yes, the mature, successful woman and the sweet, devoted younger man.
Exactly.
The internet even has a specific moniker for it, calling the younger guy a little milk dog.
A little milk dog.
Yeah, it conjures this image of a pure, innocent, fiercely loyal younger guy who isn't tainted by the cynicism of older men.
Wow. Okay, so this ready-made romantic script is basically the final brilliant coat of paint on her illusion.
It really is.
She doesn't have to do the hard, messy work of figuring out what this ambiguous relationship actually means. The culture has already written the screenplay, cast the actors, and basically handed her the script.
Yep.
In her mind, Zhang San isn't just a college kid she's hooking up with. He is this high potential catch who's bypassed all the girls his own age to firmly romantically choose her.
It creates a complete reality distortion field. The script provides the perfect, socially acceptable cover story for a dynamic that, practically speaking, is incredibly risky for a 28-year-old looking for long-term stability.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. If AO45 is 28 years old and she already has life experience and past relationship trauma, shouldn't that trigger some sort of adult risk awareness?
You would think so.
Why does an Instagram relationship trope completely override her basic self-preservation instincts? I feel like an adult woman should be able to see through a 20-year-old's game.
That is is the core paradox of this entire case study, and the answer lies in the human ego.
The ego.
Yeah, the filter is so incredibly powerful precisely because it flatters her. Think about the role this specific cultural script assigns her. She gets to be the mature, desirable, worldly woman.
Right.
She is so captivating that a young, highly sought after guy is utterly devoted to her.
Oh, wow. It validates every single insecurity she has about aging.
Exactly. When a narrative makes us feel that valuable, that secure, and that inherently attractive, our brains will actively suppress any red flags that might ruin the story.
That makes so much sense.
The flattery completely neutralizes her ability to perceive the actual risks. If she admits he might just be using her, she loses the flattering role of the irresistible older woman. So her ego just defends the illusion to the death.
It's a psychological masterpiece, honestly.
It is.
The patriarchal pressure creates the hunger, the hormones create the addiction, and the social media algorithm hands her a beautiful story to justify it all.
Perfectly stated.
The vault is fully built, heavily padded with self-deception, and the door is wide open, which perfectly sets the stage for someone to step in and exploit it. Enter Zhang San.
Right, because 045's filter is doing 99% of the work to maintain this illusion of a perfect fated romance. Zhang San barely has to lift a finger.
Wow.
The case study breaks down his behavior as a calculated, fraudulent operation.
Let's examine this operation.
Yeah.
Because he is absolutely not putting in the genuine effort required to build a real relationship.
No, not at all.
He simply finds this pre-existing, beautifully decorated illusion that 045 has built, and he essentially squats inside it.
Just moves right in.
He looks at the script she's holding, sees his designated role as the devoted, pure, younger man, and just lazily reads his lines. And his actual goal here is entirely transactional. It's pure, calculated sexual exploitation without any emotional cost.
He is leveraging her intricate illusion to get exactly what he wants. He knows she desperately needs a reason to feel loved and secure.
Yeah.
He knows she's deeply flattered by a younger man's attention, so he doesn't have to actively dismantle her boundaries. He just has to sit comfortably inside the filter she's already placed over her own eyes.
That's showing.
To her, it looks like he is passionately attracted and driving the relationship forward. To him, he's just providing the bare minimum behavioral cues, a sweet text here, a devoted look there to keep her locked into the arrangement.
Which brings up a fascinating point about the power dynamic.
Yeah.
Looking at Zhang San's psychological state, he is incredibly smug about this whole setup.
Very smug.
The profile notes that he genuinely believes his ability to manipulate an older professional woman makes him highly intelligent. He thinks he's mature beyond his years.
Yeah.
It sounds like a teenager beating a video game on easy mode, with all the cheat codes activated, and walking around thinking he's a world-class esports champion.
That captures his internal monologue perfectly. He is standing outside the filter, watching her operate inside it, and he is thoroughly enjoying what psychologists call the cognitive gap.
The cognitive gap.
Yes, he knows she's viewing him through this romantic, destiny-filled lens. He knows it's entirely fake, and he derives an immense amount of power and ego gratification from that asymmetry.
Right, because he knows something she doesn't.
Exactly. He looks at her earnestness and mistakes it for stupidity, while mistaking his own deceit for brilliance.
But the reality is, he's not actually a mastermind. I mean, he didn't build the trap.
Not at all. His smugness is completely misplaced. He is fundamentally confusing cold-bloodedness with intelligence.
Wow.
He hasn't invented some complex Machiavellian psychological trap. He has simply stumbled upon a cultural and biological loophole.
Yeah, loophole, yeah.
He found a woman struggling with age anxiety, experiencing a hormonal bond, and craving a specific social media narrative. His only genius is displaying a complete lack of empathy and exploiting those vulnerabilities.
Yeah, he thinks he's smarter than her, but really, he's just willing to be cruel in a way she isn't anticipating. Her filter is doing the actual heavy lifting. He's just the opportunistic beneficiary of her blind spot.
Absolutely.
But illusions, this elaborate, have a fatal flaw. They are structurally unsound. You cannot build a foundation on hormones, algorithmic fantasies, and ignored reality without requiring a massive, exhausting amount of cognitive dissonance to keep the walls from caving in.
It's impossible.
Reality always bats last. This filter is destined to break.
It is a ticking time bomb. The psychological pressure of maintaining an illusion that blatantly contradicts reality cannot be sustained indefinitely.
Right.
The analysis outlines a few highly specific inevitable triggers that will cause 045's sibling love filter to finally fracture.
Let's look at those triggers, because this is where the dynamic turns incredibly dark.
It does.
The first potential trigger is the discovery of Zhang San's hidden reality. The case study mentions that behind the scenes, he is actively consuming content, spending hours listening to podcasts or audio guides about how to manipulate women. He's studying how to exploit these exact romantic scripts to extract physical and financial value from relationships without ever committing.
Yeah, it's incredibly calculated.
If she ever catches a glimpse of his browser history or overhears what he's actually feeding his brain, that pure, innocent milk dog illusion shatters into a million pieces instantly.
And even if she doesn't discover his hidden habits, the second inevitable trigger will catch her. And that's his withdrawal.
His withdrawal?
Yes. Right now, her body has formed a deep chemical dependency on his physical presence. But because he has zero genuine emotional attachment, because he lacks any real object permanence regarding her feelings, the moment a new, easier target catches his eye, or the moment this arrangement becomes even slightly inconvenient for him, he will withdraw, abruptly and coldly.
And when he does, the crash is going to be catastrophic. She will experience the agonizing physiological withdrawal of dopamine and oxytocin alongside the emotional devastation of abandonment.
It's dual blow.
But this time, the social media script of the devoted younger brother won't be there to soften the blow. The script has no lines written for a sudden, callous ghosting. It will completely fail to explain his absence.
The third trigger is simply the passage of time. Eventually, the hormonal fog will lift just enough for her to look back at the timeline of the relationship objectively.
And what does she see then?
She'll realize that what she interpreted as a mutual attraction or overwhelming destiny was actually entirely orchestrated by him for his own gratification. He pushed the physical boundaries, he set the secretive pace, and she just mistook his predatory pacing for romantic passion.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. This doesn't sound like a normal breakup. This isn't, eating ice cream and crying over your ex while listening to sad music. When this specific, highly engineered filter breaks, the psychological fallout must be uniquely devastating.
It is profound psychological trauma, because the true tragedy here isn't losing Zhang San.
Right.
Losing him is actually a net positive for her life. The true trauma is the shattering self-doubt that floods her entire identity afterward.
Wow.
When the filter breaks, she won't just realize that a 20-year-old boy lied to her. She will have to face the terrifying realization that her own mind, her own body, and her own cultural conditioning actively conspired against her to build the trap.
Waking up and realizing the call was coming from inside the house.
Exactly.
Your own deeply held desires for love and your very real fears of ending up alone were the exact weapons used to dismantle you.
It's a fundamental betrayal of self-trust. The paralyzing pain comes from the realization, why did I believe this? Why did I ignore every glaring signal? I provided the emotional fuel for my own exploitation.
Yeah, that hurts just to think about.
That kind of cognitive rupture can take years to rebuild from, because how do you ever trust your own judgment again? They were physically and socially removed from the romantic and reproductive games of the harem. Because they couldn't participate, they weren't blinded by the intense desires, the hormones, or the romantic delusions that consumed everyone else.
I see.
They were the ultimate cold, detached, emotionally castrated observers of brutal power dynamics. The analyst writing these notes is taking that exact stance.
That makes total sense.
They are observing 045 and Zhang San with zero emotional involvement, simply documenting the brutal reality of the power play without being seduced by the romantic narrative.
So they're watching the chess match from above the board.
Exactly.
But here's my question. The notes are published. They exist out there in the world. But 045 hasn't seen them. Even if someone sent her a link to this exact breakdown, she wouldn't see herself in it, right?
Precisely. Because her filter currently covers her entire field of vision. When you are deep inside an immersion experience, your brain actively filters out contradictory information to protect the ego. You simply don't see the truth, even if it's written in plain text right in front of your face. So right now, these analytical notes exist as an independent, objective signal, operating entirely outside of her perceived reality.
But if the person who needs to read this analysis most is completely blind to it, why meticulously document the architecture of the trap? Is the goal to eventually force her to sit down, read the Unix series notes, and violently smash her filter?
Not at all. And from a psychological standpoint, that would be disastrous. You cannot forcefully dismantle someone else's psychological filter.
Why not?
If you try, they will perceive you as a threat, double down, and fiercely defend the illusion. The purpose of this external analysis isn't to stage an intervention. Its purpose is to serve as a persistent coordinate system. The analyst is essentially planting a flag in the solid ground of objective reality.
A coordinate system, so it's waiting for her.
Exactly. When her illusion inevitably fractures, when the sudden withdrawal happens, or the cognitive dissonance finally becomes too heavy to carry, she is going to go into free fall. She will be lost in that profound, terrifying self-doubt we just talked about. But when those cracks form, these structural obliques, these detached observations, will finally be able to seep through the broken glass of her filter.
And when they do, it's not going to be an arrogant, I told you so. It's going to give her the exact vocabulary she needs to understand the mechanics of how she was manipulated.
Yes.
It's like leaving a detailed map in a maze for someone. They might arrogantly ignore the map while they think they know exactly where they're going, but the absolute second they realize they're hopelessly lost, that map is a lifesaver.
That's a great way to put it.
It takes the terrifying chaos of, why did this happen to me? Am I crazy? Yeah. And turns it into a clear, understandable structure. It wasn't destiny. It was the patriarchal clock, combined with an oxytocin rush, amplified by an algorithm.
You've captured the exact value of the analysis. It shifts her experience from an unexplainable, deeply shameful personal tragedy into a comprehensible mechanical psychological event. She isn't broken. She was just caught in a well-documented machine. And understanding the machine is the very first step toward reclaiming her agency and rebuilding her self-trust.
Let's zoom out and summarize the anatomy of this entire power play, because it is a lot to process.
It really is.
We started with the vault. How ambient traditional anxieties about aging and marriage, combined with purely biological chemical responses and heavily reinforced by modern social media scripts, can all be braided together to create a blinding, immersive filter.
And then we explored the heist. How opportunistic bad actors like Zhang San can coldly identify that filter, step comfortably inside it, and use it as an emotional fuel source for their own transactional gratification, all while falsely believing their lack of empathy makes them intellectual masterminds.
And finally, we looked at the inevitable, devastating collapse of the illusion, and how having an external framework, a detached coordinate system, is the only way to survive the self-doubt that follows the rupture. But this brings us to you, the listener. Why should you care about 045 and Zhang San? What is the real takeaway here if you aren't currently caught in a sibling love dynamic?
Well, because this case study is an absolute masterclass in self-awareness. It's an urgent invitation to audit your own reality.
Absolutely.
It challenges you to look at your own relationships, your own intense desires, and ask yourself a very difficult, very uncomfortable question. Am I seeing this person and the situation clearly? Or am I just looking at a projection of my own cultural conditioning, my own biological panics, and the narratives my social media algorithm tells me I desperately need?
Are you actually in love with the person standing in front of you, or are you just in love with the script they happen to be reading from?
Yeah, that's the big question.
It brings us right back to that vault from the beginning. We all think we are diligently protecting our hearts, but sometimes we are the ones who like ourselves inside the vault, willingly hand over the combination to a stranger, and call it destiny.
The human mind is incredibly adept at storytelling, and our deepest vulnerabilities are the exact ink it uses to write those stories.
Which leaves us with one final, lingering thought to ponder long after this deep dive ends. If our deepest vulnerabilities, our timeline panics, and our romantic desires are so heavily programmed by the society and the algorithms we live with, how much of what we experience as genuine destiny or true love is actually just us perfectly reciting a cultural script we didn't even realize we had memorized?
A fascinating and honestly slightly terrifying question to leave on.
Think about that the next time you feel the universe pulling you inevitably towards someone. Thanks for joining us on this psychological investigation, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive. Imagine holding the